isolation, loneliness, anxiety, only leaving the house in the desperate hope that you can get what you need, a sense of dread and darkness, suddenly facing the stark reality of your own mortality. These are just some of the emotions that we may have experienced since the corona outbreak ushered in the unholy concepts of social distancing and social isolation. But for anyone who's ever suffered from hardcore drug addiction, this separation from society is the standard operating procedure. I lived under these conditions for the better part of a decade, and let's be honest, it's not a lot of fun really, is it? It's a dark, dark time, and I'm perfectly at ease in admitting that I think this sucks. One of the ways that doctors are treating those suffering with severe symptoms of COVID-19 is to put them into a medically induced coma, and church, for many of us, that's exactly what this feels like. Why would God allow this to happen? In the book of Genesis, it says that God created everything, culminating in the pinnacle of his creative genius, the man Adam, a seemingly perfect and divine creature. And God looked at Adam and thought, yeah, he's alright, but I think I could probably do better. So it says that he put Adam into a deep sleep, and from Adam's darkened state, from the innermost depths of his being, God created Eve, the mother of all humanity. Adam's isolation led to God's creation. Later in chapter 15, it says that God made a covenant with Abraham, and halfway through the process it said that God caused Abraham to fall into a deep sleep, and a great and terrible darkness came upon him. God finished the ceremony of the covenant alone, inviting the judgment of Abraham's failure to live up to the bargain upon himself. God was essentially agreeing to pay the cost for Abraham's inevitable inability to keep the covenant that he'd entered into with God. From the darkness and isolation of Abraham's unconsciousness, God created the family that would outnumber the stars in the heaven, the family through whom the entire world would know blessing. And perhaps most poignantly, it says that on the day of the Passover, from noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of those standing there heard this, they said, he's calling Elijah. Immediately one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it for Jesus to drink. The rest said, now leave him alone, let's see if Elijah comes to save him. And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. Jesus entered into the darkness, isolated and alone. No one came to drop off any shopping or medical supplies. Cut off from his Father, hated, reviled, persecuted and cast out. It was A.W. Tozer who used to say that one thing about a man who's carrying a cross out of Jerusalem, he isn't coming back. Jesus entered into death. You don't get any more socially distant than that. But Jesus suffered the indignity of the cross and the injustice of our sin for the joy that he knew was to follow. Oakwood, weeping may tarry for the night, but joy comes in the morning.